All right, I wanted to do a quick follow-up video to the video I did covering the Spyderco Tenacious value series. And I talked about the 4 knives that are specifically in this series, and I alluded to having others in related series that are basically similar builds, similar materials. But there's some differences in the designs that make me like them, well, somewhat better, and therefore I've gotten more use out of them, though they retain the same cost-cutting issues. So today I wanted to talk about the Efficient and then a slimmer version of it known as the Astute. Alright, before I get into it, I've got to do my traditional paper and cardboard cutting, right? So first the Efficient. Manages a toothy, slicey edge, right? Let's hold up some cardboard here. Couple snags, slides through it very well. Let's go with the thinner Astute. And paper. Sometimes I snag uneven bits on that edge a little bit, but yeah, it's a reasonable slicey knife. And some cardboard. Here we go. Lock down once it bites. As you're going to see, I don't feel I can get as good a grip on this one. Let me explain why. Okay, first a quick recap of the Tenacious series review. Why did I get all 4 knives in this series? Well, they were my entry into Spyderco products. I hadn't owned a Spyderco knife before, and I didn't want to spend the big money if I wasn't sure I was going to like it. I was also looking for things that were familiar to me and preferred, like liner locks and G10 scales, and these had them. A lot of other Spydercos don't. And I got a knife that was just pretty solid and comfortable and usable. You've got steel liners. You've got grippy but not pocket shreddy G10 scales, but then combined with this pocket clip, there's a give and take. The pocket clip is not the strongest and has this little extra tabby thing on it. Makes it really easy to get in and out of a pants pocket without tearing up the pants. But at the same time, if something caught on the end of that tabby thing, it's really easy for this knife to unexpectedly get ejected. And then if you didn't catch it, somebody somewhere gets a free knife. But since you're not spending much money, right now they're going anywhere from 45 to 60 bucks, it's not a huge tragedy. Now, lockup has been good. Opening not the smoothest, but good enough, and it just the opening system, the thumb hole appealed to me at the time. Steel, however, this is where you're kind of, that's your cost saving. HCR13 MOV. Shaving sharp out of the box, nice thin slicey edge with a full flat grind, but it didn't hold that edge very long and needs regular, at least honing, if not full resharpening. And a couple of these I actually did take a couple of divots out of the edge. Just not doing terribly hard tasks. But because of the price of the knives, I was willing to put these to some hard use things that might damage a knife. Also made it more, appealing for me to loan a knife like this, even for an extended period, to somebody who needed a knife. And when I lost one accidentally, it wasn't such a big issue to just go and order another one. So yeah, it wasn't a huge tragedy. So those actually made these pretty useful to me. A couple of things though about the design I wasn't terribly crazy about. The biggest thing is, well, it's right here. A lot of Spydercos have this in their design, where this finger guard, or whatever you want to call it, it just feels kind of in the way. And I do, especially on a knife that's a little bit bigger, I like finger choils. This has a thumb ramp that's jimped, but doesn't have the finger choil. So I don't feel like I'm getting like full use out of the blade, if that makes any sense, especially down towards the end, or I can't really choke up on it. So when they came out with knives that had a lot of similar features and materials and price, that had a few things that I felt were missing on this, well, I jumped on it. And the first one that I got was the Efficient. Now the Efficient is a little bit smaller, but it's not smaller than, or say, the next size down in the Tenacious line, which would be the Persistence. Tenacious has a 3 3/8 inch blade. The Persistence is 2.75. This is just a shave under 3 inches, so kind of right in between. So I figured that'd be a great length. But you're going to notice there are several differences straight up in the shape of the knife, right? Couple of things. Shape of the blade. Blade's a lot more triangular, which means you don't get quite so much belly curve in that tip. There is also no thumb ramp, but there is some jimping here. But yes, yeah, there's a choil. A choil to make Mike happy. So that was one of the things that attracted me to it. A couple of other things that are interesting. On small notes, for whatever reason, in some of these other knives that I'm going to cover, no serrations. Serrations on the liner lock, no serrations on this one. It's smooth, so it doesn't quite grab your fingernail quite as positively, but it still works just fine. And you'll notice there's a pretty big relief cut to get your finger in there and operate it, so that's all good. But the biggest issue, the biggest change, I mean, just look at the shape of the handle. A lot more curved and swept. Also then sends that blade curved forward a lot more. So if you like a knife that's straighter, this one's probably not going to appeal to you. This one definitely feels a lot more forward angled in your hand. For me, that just makes a knife that's more slicey as a utility and also potential food prep knife. So that appealed to me. It worked. So that was all good. What are a couple of other oddities about this particular design? Well, one of the things I mentioned about the Tenacious series is the pocket clip is not only reversible left to right, top to bottom. Weird thing, though, is out of the factory, and you may have noticed this, they all come with the knife mounted, so it's the carry is tipped down, which is unusual. Often if there's a choice, they'll mount it for a tip up, which seems to be everybody's preference. I haven't bothered to move them because I don't really care. I just get used to whichever way, and I'm lazy that way. But this one, you can reverse it left to right, but you can't reverse it top to bottom. But that's not a big deal for me. It works as is, and the clip's out of the way, doesn't give me any hot spots. What do I not like so much about it? Well, there is one interesting thing, and it was something that most of the Tenacious knives didn't have a problem with, at least for me. My stubby little thumbs. If there's not a lot of clearance between the scale and whatever the opening is, whether it's a stud or a hole, I sometimes have trouble getting my thumb in there positively and quickly to get the knife open smoothly. Plenty of room on the Tenacious. Here you'll notice that, yeah, especially on the left side, if I'm doing it left-handed, the hole is really close to the scale, even with the relief cut. But worse, as I open it, let me see if you can see this happen. My thumb bumps in to that little hook right there. Now this is the second one of these I've owned because, yes, the first one got ejected and Stranger got free knife. I did take the time to reshape that on the other knife. And then after I lost that knife a couple of years ago, I went ahead and ordered another one because, yeah, I did like the knife. I carried this one, or its predecessor, a lot. And it became one of my favorite EDC knives. And then I lost it, and then I bought another one, and I just never got around to reshaping it. And then I get injured, and then all of my thumb opening knives became drawer knives for the better part of a year and a half, and they're just recently coming back out of the drawer. I may make that change to this knife if I decide I'm going to carry it again. But yeah, it's just a little thing. But I think for the money, which right now these go for about $50, they're still on the market. If you happen to like a knife that's shaped like this, it's not a bad knife. Not the greatest steel, but it's pretty solid. Now, Spyderco recently came out with a thinner version of, well, not really this knife, but something in a similar size and shape that they called the Astute. And I just looked on the market and I couldn't find it, so maybe it's already been discontinued. But I didn't like it as much. I thought, maybe a slimmer carry knife would be a good thing. But it really just, it's not. Yeah, it is similar length, similar kind of forward angle. It does kind of go back a little bit to the Tenacious design aesthetics where you got just a little bit of a thumb ramp, which oddly doesn't have any jimping. It's smooth. Come back to that in a second, because that's also paired with a smooth liner lock. No serrations either way. Makes the grip a little bit slippy, which I think is exacerbated by it being kind of thin. Now you also get back to that very common Spyderco design where you've got this little extended guard bump, whatever you want to call it here, instead of a choil. But on a skinny little knife like this, I don't really mind not having a choil, because I don't feel like I'm getting that kind of a grip on it anyway, which gets me to, I don't feel like I'm kind of getting that kind of a grip on it anyway. This is almost too thin, to the point where also the blade, being this thin, lacking the width front to back, just actually flex in this knife. Yeah, that's not very inspiring. Now, also gets into that problem, at least for me, where, yeah, the spidey hole is pretty close to the scale. So between the knife being so thin and then having trouble getting my thumb in there, I have a hard time opening this knife. And it's probably exacerbated by having just an extra strong detent bearing, so it's a little harder to break open and then get it all the way open. So I always find myself fumbling with this knife, and I don't feel very confident with it. I feel like it's just too skinny and flimsy. So I didn't love the Astute very much. Now, I did get a couple of similar knives that are smaller, and we'll talk about those in another video. I don't want to go too long, and that would be the Cat and the Chicago, that have similar design aesthetics to this, but are shorter, and I did like those a lot. I'll get to those in another video. Until then, again, let's get our usual conversation going. Let me know about any Spydercos that you have, that you like, that you don't like, that have given you problems or have held up exceptionally well. And until I get to, well, part 3, we'll call it, when I get to the Cat and the Chicago, as usual, thanks you guys for watching, following, liking, sharing, subscribing. And I hope to see you back for, well, that and, yes, other reviews.